Welcome to Caucus Connections, a podcast with the Kentucky House Majority Caucus.
It's Caucus Connections, and we're here with Representative Phillip Pratt of the 62nd District, and he's going to be talking to us today about broadband. How are you today, sir?
I'm excellent, sir.
I thought we'd start out today's show with you talking about the letter you wrote to the governor. Why don't you read a little bit of the letter, and then we'll discuss it a little bit further.
Dear Governor Bashir, I'm writing to urge you to consider allocating federal CARES Act funding to the currently created Broadband Deployment Fund. During the 2020 legislative session, I sponsored House Bill 362, which created the Broadband Deployment Fund. This program was designed to assist in bringing broadband internet to unserved areas that depend on reliable, fast internet for economic development and job growth. As chairman of the House Small Business and Information Technology Committee, I believe broadband is an essential infrastructure in our digital economy. We must take a targeted approach to accelerate access to broadband in our state's most underserved area. I applaud the recent announcement that $8 million would be used to supply internet access to children in low-income homes after the start date for in-person classroom instruction was delayed. However, it does not go far enough to help the communities where there are currently no providers of broadband infrastructure in place. While I support your decision to subsidize internet access to families with school-aged children, this is only a short-term solution and does not get to the heart of the issue. We must have high-speed internet, high-capacity fiber optic cable for providers to utilize if we will ever get to see tangible improvements in this area. This allocation, while helpful and meaningful, will not get the new infrastructure in place to combat this systemic problem for those who do not already have a wired connection. If we are ever going to connect to all corners of our state to the 21st century technology, we must make construction and creation of broadband infrastructure a priority. This is why I'm asking for additional allocations to be made in this critical area. Now's the time to act, and the recent influx of federal dollars makes this the right moment for Kentucky to capitalize on the current need and make significant improvements in this area.
Now, Representative Pratt, you're chair of the House Small Business and Information Technology Committee. It's been a major focus of your committee, hasn't it?
It has been. We realized that having high-quality internet, or even reasonable internet, is an economic driver for Kentucky. It is something that we're going to need if we want to move Kentucky into the 21st century to be able to compete with other states for jobs and bring high-paying jobs back to Kentucky and into Kentucky, and especially with kids right now being delayed and doing virtual learning. It has become more important than ever that we have high-speed internet or reliable internet or internet at all to all parts of the state of Kentucky. If not, our school kids are going to keep falling farther and farther behind, and that we can't stand for.
And if you take too, not just schoolwork and kids learning from home, but folks working from home and telehealth services too, right?
Yes, sir. And telehealth has come with a big push right now, because right now those people are medically frail and they don't need to be out in the public, so they need to have access to a doctor at least they can do visual health with. And also, it's amazing some of the technology they've come up with now, but unfortunately here in the state of Kentucky we still don't have access to all the state of Kentucky. The people especially need it the most vulnerable are those who need it the worst, and unfortunately they don't have internet, and that's something we have to work on.
How did we get here? Give me a little bit of the history behind Kentucky Wired.
Kentucky is ranked 45th in the nation when it comes to access high-speed internet. Despite $140 million taxpayer dollars invested into Governor Steve Bashir's over-budget behemoth, Kentucky Wired, up to 34% of Kentuckians still have little or no reliable broadband internet access. Kentucky Wired, projected to be a 3,200-mile, 3-year, $410 million project, has exploded into a 5-year, $1.2 billion debacle, with several investigations into contracts signed by the Steve Bashir administration. At this point in time, there's still significant parts of Kentucky that this has not been done in, so we're not over with this yet. We're at $1.2 billion, and there's several more millions, if not billions, to be put into this. and we still aren't getting anywhere. We've got to do better than this.
At what point in the process did Kentucky Wired fall behind?
Well, I think the problem is getting the pole connections was harder than they thought it would be. And actually, some of the money they were going to use to finance this was going to be on the backs of the school systems, which can't, of course, afford it anyway. But lo and behold, as it came out, the federal government said you can't make them switch over and pay for higher speed internet than what we have now and use this money for it. So it fell apart very quickly. And so now it's slugging along, but it's still, there's still another ring, which is the western part of Kentucky, they haven't even touched yet. So it is getting worse all the time.
They've not even gotten over into the western part of the state yet.
They have not, no.
And is that part of the focus of your committee, is to kind of get into the weeds of that, of what went on with the whole project, even going back to the original Beshear administration?
Yes, we do. We're trying to figure out how in the world we went from $410 million project to $1.2 billion plus project right now. How did we fall that far behind? How did they misappropriate that bad? How did they misplan that bad? And again, at the end of the day, all we want is for Kentucky, for the unserved and underserved areas of Kentucky, to have high-speed internet. And it's quite obvious Kentucky Wired is not going to be the answer. And actually, Kentucky Wired originally said that they were just going to be the backbone and build it, and then they were going to allow people to connect to that. Well, they haven't even done that part of it yet, so it's not working at all. So we've got to do better.
And you're hoping some of this federal funding can then help with this project, correct?
The governor and his staff received $1.7 billion in CARES fund. My letter basically was urging them, while I applaud the $8 million they put to help the low income afford high-speed internet, it does nothing to areas where unserved and underserved kids live right now and people live. I'd like to see them take some of that money and put towards building internet to those that are unserved and underserved areas of Kentucky, which need it desperately to be able to even do their schoolwork or even be able to order online. Yes, sir.
Have you had any response from the governor's office about your letter, or have any meetings been set up to discuss it with them?
I did get a return letter from them saying they appreciate my letter, they appreciate the fact that I'd reached out to them, but at this point in time they couldn't put that money into it. I would urge them to find ways to put it into it, because this is something that will help everybody in the state of Kentucky, because that's what we need to be able to move in the 21st century and be able to find good paying, high quality jobs, and actually get telehealth to those that are most needy and vulnerable in the state of Kentucky.
Kentucky is behind in so many ways. This would go a long way to getting us caught up with really the rest of the nation, wouldn't it? It
would, and actually if you look at the states around us, this is what they're doing. They're putting money into building of the internet service to the unserved and underserved areas. We haven't done that. We've put our money into building a backbone of Kentucky Wired. I would say that if we took that $1.2 billion plus that we're going to spend on Kentucky Wired and put it into encouraging the current providers we have now to the unserved and unserved areas, that we would actually not be 45th, but we'd at least be a whole lot higher than that at this point in time.
Right. Thank you so much for talking with us. Again, Representative Phillip Pratt of the 62nd District here today on Caucus Connections.
You've been listening to Caucus Connections. Tune in next week for another episode from the House Majority Caucus.